Well, good morning and welcome to Wisdom of the Soul, presented by the Ageless Wisdom Mystery School. Today's episode is presented live, as always, Sunday mornings, 11 a.m. California time. But if you're ever unable to join us live, reminding you that you can watch the full video on YouTube or listen to an edited version as a podcast to your favorite podcast player. We're on all the podcast apps and players and directories, aggregators and podcatchers. In any event, just search Ageless Wisdom Mystery School with Google, with YouTube, or with your podcast player. Ageless Wisdom Mystery School. I want to remind you also that I am still working on my intention to put together a weekly studio class, a kind of a salon. Everything I do is really an educational alternative to psychotherapy. It has, for 35 plus years, taken a middle position between life coaching and psychotherapy. I'm not a psychotherapist. We're an educational alternative to that. In other words, I provide practical and portable tools and techniques that you can use in your life to be more independent rather than dependent upon me. So this is much more inclusive than life coaching, but much less intrusive than psychotherapy. And the idea of doing a kind of a studio or a salon that's conversational in nature and limited to 10 people. I'd like to set it up for Saturday mornings at 11 a.m. And so I have 2 or 3 people that have committed to it already. And I'm ready to begin to, what'll I say, take reservations. If this is something you're interested in, send me an email. You can simply respond to the newsletter at awmysteryschool@gmail.com or any of my other email addresses. My initials at theagelesswisdom.com works as well. And say, sign me up or tell me more, or I have some questions. Get in touch with me. Email me back about that Saturday studio, that conversation, right? I think it'll be a really nice middle ground between this free class, which will, of course, continue every Sunday, absolutely free, and the private work that I do, which is intensive, and that's where people really kick in the afterburners. If you're really ready to rocket into the future, it's again, this is not for severely neurotic or psychotic people. This is for healthy, happy. Everything we do is for healthy, happy, well-adjusted people who are living in a stressful world with a lot of madness and isolation and stress. And we need the tools, we need the techniques. So the first one's free. And that's a chance for you to feel me out, see what I think I might be able to offer you, and a chance for me to explain what I do in the context of what you're looking for. A lot of it's counseling, the private one-on-one work, and much of it is just people coming for a basic training, 10-session training called Fly, feeling like yourself, a real commitment to changing your life. So with the commercials out of the way, let's get to business today. Our topic is choosing your choices. If someone were to ask me, Michael, in all the years you've been doing this, personal and spiritual development work, or personal and transpersonal development work, what is the one big concept? What's the what's the overarching, overriding big enchilada here? What's the takeaway? I would probably pause for a second and gather my thoughts, and then I'm sure I would say something about awareness, consciousness. It's the great mystery that we are conscious and sentient. There's a quote I've always liked by Albert Einstein, who is not only a scientist, but a mystic as well, who said anybody can know things. I think he actually said any fool can know things. The secret is to understand them. Consider that for a second. How many things do we know, do we believe we know, think we know, convinced that we know, but really don't fully understand? And how would you know if you understood? One of the basic precepts of wisdom is to be aware of how much you do not know. I mean, nobody likes a know-it-all, right? Know-it-alls are not very smart because they think they know it all. Very dangerous position. Best to be humble and say, well, I have an idea about this. I have this understanding. I have these beliefs. I have this experience. But there must be a lot here I do not know, that we may never know about the mysteries of the universe. So what is that element of understanding that lifts knowledge into true understanding? Gestalt, big pictures, the whole enchilada. It's awareness. And looking back, I'm sort of stunned, frankly, that I lived so much of my life unaware of the quality of awareness. I thought it was enough to be smart, to be intelligent, to be well-informed. But consider, what good is intelligence if you're living in the fog of unawareness? The example that always comes to my mind is sitting at the traffic light after it's already turned green. And the guy behind me has to honk the horn to bring me back to reality. Well, where was I? I didn't pass out. I didn't go unconscious. I went somewhere, right? Lost in thought, daydreaming, drifting away. But I was unaware of the present moment, unaware of my circumstances. So I can be walking around with a genius IQ and not worth a tinker's damn if I'm living in this brain fog of unawareness. And guess what causes it? You know what causes it. It's stress, it's anxiety, it's the F word, fear, by any name, worry, doubt, a little bit of apprehension, slightly nervous, or full-on panic, or horror, or terror, or anything between, any variation of confusion, uncertainty, and the physiological stress, starting with muscular tension that goes along with that. And not only does stress and overstimulation, anxiety, shatter and scatter awareness, mentally and emotionally, but it weakens and degrades the body's immune system. It's just bad mental health all the way around. And so to be more aware, that's what we're going to talk about today. How do you develop that awareness muscle? Where is it in the brain? What exercises can we do to wake up, to be more aware, to be more alert? You know, this attempt by the right, the social reformers in America, well, there's social reformers on the left and the right, the culture war, using this word woke. Woke has nothing to do with politics or the culture war. It's an ancient concept that goes back to really pre-religious times of shamanism and paganism and the people who lived really close to the earth. And there's a wonderful story about in the sutras about Buddha after he was enlightened, coming through the woods and into the clearing where workers are clearing the forest, and he had this presence about him, this charisma. Apparently, he just shone like a star, and had an immediate impact on everybody. And whoa, who's this? And one shouted out, "Are you a god?" And reportedly, Buddha chuckles and says, "No, no, no, no. I'm not a god." And somebody shouts out, "Well, certainly you're a great avatar. You're a sage. You're a holy man of some sort." Religious person, Buddha says, "No, no, no. I'm none of those." And the third then shouts out, "Well, what are you?" And Buddha says, "Awake. I'm awake. Right here, right now." So this is the practice of mindfulness, technically defined as to see clearly and deeply what actually is, right now, right here, in the present moment, and without judgment. To see things without judging is to see them purely. We always presume we have to judge and figure stuff out and, chase the problem and work through it to arrive at some sort of understanding. The idea that you could see most clearly and most deeply, most objectively, most fully, without judgment, is something that merits your consideration. So we're going to talk about the center of awareness, the decision-making facility or faculty of the brain, where that exists, and how we can develop it. Okay, choosing your choices. Otherwise, we're left like most people, and like each of us, much of our days, acting reflexively. Sometimes it's called emotionally polarized. Instead of a thought that is empowered by a feeling into an action, we just act out of the emotion reflexively and then think about it later. So it's emotion, action, and then rationalization. Well, it's often said we're less rational creatures than we are rationalizing creatures. But why did you do that? Well, because I felt like it, and then we get defensive. You want to make something out of it? I've got to now defend my action, which I still haven't thought through clearly. Haven't considered my choices, much less the consequences of my behavior. Wouldn't it be nice if we could be present enough, awake enough, aware enough to examine our choices and consider the consequences before we initiate deliberately and purposefully a particular action, speaking or moving, taking action, doing something. That's what we're going to talk about today. So let's begin with an opening meditation. If you get comfortable in your furniture, your chairs, your meditation cushion, cross-legged on the floor of the bed, wherever you happen to be. The idea is to sit up straight and erect, but not rigid. So get a sense of yourself balanced, move your head around a little bit, your shoulders, and sort of get loosey-goosey, and feel centered and balanced and centered. Close your eyes. Simply closing your eyes reduces brain activity by more than 3/4. Some say 85%. Frees up all that brain activity. So with your eyes closed, get comfortable and feel yourself in your body. Become aware of how it feels to live in this body, feeling safe and relaxed, warm and comfortable, at ease, peace of mind, with nothing that needs doing, without any need to go anywhere, without any need to accomplish or attain, just for a few moments to actually be here now. And I'd like you to lift your awareness gently to that spot in the center of your forehead, the sixth of 7 chakras known as the Ajna Center, Ajna, Ajna. The third eye, between the brows, the center of the forehead. Feel around, you'll find it. Trust your feelings. It's like a little nest or little detent. You'll find it. And see yourself sitting there, as if in a little yoga pose in the center of your forehead, as if it were the bullseye of the target, the center of centers, feeling safe and relaxed. And know this third eye, this Ajna center, to be the point of integration for the 3 lower worlds: the mental, the emotional, and the physical. Like nesting dolls, aligned, combined, together as one. Mentally quiet, emotionally calm, physically still. Allowing yourself to settle effortlessly into a wonderful, warm, peaceful feeling, as if everything is okay. More than that, as if everything is perfect. As if everything is right on schedule. Even if it feels like pretending or imagining. Allow yourself to explore the feeling of everything being okay. There's a saying in Eastern philosophy, I believe it's Confucianism: nature never hurries. It always manages to get everything done at exactly the right time, with no effort whatsoever. Give up the hurry. Just for a few minutes. You can have it back later if you really want it. Just try it out. What if there were nowhere to go, nothing to do, just for a few moments? Everything's fine. Maintaining this gentle focus, extend a line of laser light horizontally, straight back to the middle of your brain. This is a matter of simply imagining. And as your mind becomes more calm, it will be easier to do. So be patient. Don't judge yourself. These are new exercises. And once you've imagined that line of laser light, whatever color it occurs to you, that horizontal line established from the ajna on the brows, straight back to the center of the brain, I'd like you to imagine slowly sliding your awareness along that line into the middle of the brain. There is, in fact, a hollow, a ventricle at this point in the center of your brain. It's filled with cerebral spinal fluid. It bathes the brain and the spinal cord in a fluid that is, well, intended, I'll say, to transmit electrical impulses. There is an actual cave that you find yourself in with a little imagination in the very center of your brain. And once you've gently established a place there with your awareness, extend a second line of laser light vertically, straight up through the crown chakra at the top of your head. This is known as the Sushumna, and it corresponds to your, metaphorically, to your connection with your higher self, your oversoul, above and free of form. But having extended that line vertically straight up through the crown, you remain at the crossroads in the cave in the center of the head. And we're going to gently hold this L-shaped alignment for just a few moments. And hereby create new wiring in the brain. Wiring that will allow us to promote our growth to being soul-infused persona. And so imagine yourself in the cave in the middle of the brain, receptive to a downward precipitation of spirit, of love, of kindness, of conscious awareness, a gentle energy flow moving down that vertical line from above into the cave in the hollow in the middle of the brain. A gentle precipitation of the spirit, the energy that illumines and animates us. It is awareness, sentience, and responsiveness to the world around you. Simply receive that as if you're a battery, absorbing, drinking, soaking it up. An energy that vivifies and heals and redeems, restoring, renewing, uplifting. Put a little smile on your face if you're not aware of it already. The most subtle, gentle upturning of the corner of your mouths. Not forced, not through any effort, simply by allowing. For joy is your natural state. But maintain that focus in the cave, open and receptive. And almost as if there is a mirror at a 45-degree angle, like in a SLR camera. Imagine that energy being now reflected forward along the horizontal line, to and through the ajna, and out into the world, sending peace and love, sending kindness, sending ahimsa, which is non-injury, gentleness, loving compassion, forward, out into the world. Imagine it calming the waters. Imagine, in some miraculous way, having an influence first on the people closest to you, that they might be less afraid, less confused. And extending out into your neighborhoods and your communities, calm water, peace and quiet, stillness, almost as if others all around the world are beginning to imagine the utopian future, a world of peace and love and harmony that is closer than we realize. In fact, it is at hand now and always has been for those who wish it. Imagine having that influence. Not from you or because of you, but through you, as an agent, a channel, a medium of the one consciousness, the one awareness, the absolute. As if you are an agent or a medium of that, transmitting it out into the world. Not only now, but later today and tomorrow and next week. The way you speak to people. And your kindness and your well-considered actions. Replacing reflexive, thoughtless behavior with even-tempered, well-reasoned choices. And initiating those behaviors out into the world for the greater good of all. This is no sacrifice. For each of us is part of the greater good of all. This is not a you or me world unless we insist on it. It's a you and me world. It is inclusive. Spirit excludes no thing. Sense that embrace. Feel that wholeness and that fullness. In the cave in the middle of the brain, receptive to above, causative on the horizontal. Simply affirm that with a silent, and so it is. Feel your commitment, your devotion and dedication to being better and better. Forgiving yourself when you screw up, when you make a mistake, or overlook a consequence. Let it go. And now begin slowly to slide your awareness forward along that horizontal line of light. Back into the ajna on the forehead. The center of integration for the three lower worlds. Physical, emotional, and mental. Become aware of your body. Feel the furniture supporting you. Form the intention to return to the waking state. Gentle rising up as if awakening. And eyes open now, back in the room. Eyes open, wide awake. Back in the room, feeling fine, rested, refreshed, feeling better than before. Stretch a little bit. Big deep breath. Stomp your feet a little. Get back in your body. Nice. That's a pretty advanced meditation. And I think we've done it once before, maybe 6 or 8 months ago. So be patient with yourself. It's not like using lines of light to connect centers in the body. It's pretty esoteric. And first few times you do that, you're going to think, oh my gosh, I can't concentrate. My mind is jumping all over the place. I'm not doing it well. I don't know. This is hard. I'm thinking about lunch. Whatever. Do your best. That's all. What you're doing is building the muscle that lives in the frontal lobes up here, right behind your forehead, that is in charge of the executive function of focus or paying attention and making decisions, examining your choices, considering the consequences of those choices, doing it in a playful and fun kind of way when you're not rushed, right? It's almost like an artist would approach a blank canvas or a block of clay or marble or something, or a musician approach his or her instrument. Happiness comes from peace. Peace of mind, comes from paying attention to what is right now. Whether it's wonderful, joyous, happy, yippee-i-o, or painful. There is no value in running, in worry, in fear. Fear is a nightmare. It's full of shadows that are exaggerated and distorted and untrue. And you will not find solutions, and you will not resolve anything if we counsel fear, if we let our emotions run away with us. We have to find a balance. You see, it's not a matter of repressing your feelings or allowing yourself to be overwhelmed by your feelings. You have to find that dynamic middle, and I say dynamic because the middle keeps moving. It's like a football game. The end zones are only where you score. There's no game happening in the end zones. Everything and nothing. Good guys and bad guys, right and wrong. The game is played in the middle. That 100-yard pitch. And the middle is not always the 50-yard line. The middle could be the 60 or there's no 60-yard line. You know what I mean? Could be a 60-40, a 30-70, a 70-30, down on the 10-yard line. That's all the middle. So when I say balance, between repressing your feelings and being overwhelmed by your feelings. It's a dynamic. You've got to breathe and relax. And remember those guys on the Ed Sullivan Show or in the circus? They put the flat board on the round ball and balance, and then usually juggle or do something else at the same time. The nice thing about the sphere is if you take a big ball, like a beach ball or something, put your hand on top of the ball and roll it around. The thing about the sphere is it's always balanced. It's always centered. It's always above its own center of gravity. This is what the martial artist does, is maintain their center so they can't be thrown. Now, if it were a square or a triangle or any other odd shape, polygon, you could tip that such that when you let it go, it would fall one way or another. It's off balance. It's looking to find its center, right? But the ball, you take your hand off, no matter where you put it, you take your hand off, it just sits there. It's happy. Be the ball. Be that centered in mind, body, and spirit at all times. That's where awareness lives. In the present moment, without judgment. And it's happening right here, right behind your forehead. If you notice, gorillas and apes, with whom we share 99% of our DNA, that's a little scary to consider, that we are 99% monkey. There's a few things that are different, like we've lost the gene for hair all over our bodies, or for the most part. We're a little hairy. But the big difference is the sloping forehead of the bonobo, the chimp, the gorilla. They have no frontal lobe. From the eye, you'll notice from just above the eyebrow, it goes back on like a 30-degree angle. Those frontal lobes are missing. Only human beings have these extended foreheads, these frontal lobes. And this is where the executive function takes place. This is where we get that second level of thinking. That figure of speech, on second thought, I'd have you reflect on that a bit. What is that about? Nobody ever talks about that. What is that? Wait a minute, on second thought, that's our ability to reflect on our thinking. Animals don't do that. They don't wonder if dinner tonight is going to be the same thing they had last night. They don't wonder where the food's coming from. They're very zen. They're very, very in the moment. And as I've said many times, and many other teachers as well, while there's great benefit in our learning to do that, there's also extraordinary benefit in our ability to use these higher forms of cognition to reflect on our thinking, to consider our choices, to consider the consequences of those choices, to play it out in your mind. Well, what if this? What if that? When I used to do sales seminars, I would teach salespeople to do this before any call, whether it was a face-to-face, telephone, email, text, whatever. You do not initiate that call without running it through in your mind's eye first. One of the basic principles of Maxwell Maltz's classic psychocybernetics is that, to a large degree, I don't want to overstate this, but to a large degree, you can't do anything that you're unable or unwilling to imagine yourself being able to do. Sometimes you might luck into doing something you didn't know you could do. But if you found yourself saying, well, I just can't imagine that, your whole unconscious mind goes, okay, can't imagine it? No problem. We'll make sure it never happens. People say, what good is it being an optimist? I don't understand why you would want to be optimistic. Well, because if you can't imagine it, you can't do it. Or the Walt Disney version of that is, if you can dream it, you can do it. Think of how many Disney stories are about wishing on a star and your dreams come true. And that's not just fanciful fairy tale, help the kids go to sleep at night kind of thing. We are dreaming machines. And if your dreams are full of fear and they're nightmares and they're grotesque, distorted shadows, those are the seeds you plant. That's what you reap. That's what you reap what you sow. The universe only says yes. Those nightmares will be realized. Everything you worry about will be realized. So on the other hand, remember asking Timothy Leary once. I interviewed Leary 7 or 8 times on the radio. Got to know him pretty well. And I said to Timothy once, are you an optimist? And he looked at me like I was crazy. And he said, well, of course. He said, what choice do I have? And I just thought that was brilliant. What choice do I have? Of course, we're dreamers. And you can handle disappointment, right? It's okay if your dreams don't come true. Just stand up, dust yourself off. The Japanese proverb, fall down 7, stand up 8. Do it again. You know? So these frontal lobes, this is where we learn to pay attention. It's an odd phrase, pay attention. We could call it focus. I really hesitate to call it concentration, because we've been told all our lives to try to concentrate, as if it's an effort. Concentration is not an effort. You don't try to dream. You allow yourself to dream, to get lost. And I don't mean completely lost either, but it's a drifting, right? It's a letting go. But you bring your awareness along with you. You explore your options. You explore your choices. You play them through in your mind. In Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning, I've mentioned this before, it's important. He says, between stimulus and response, there is a space. Between what happens to you and what you do in response, or as a reaction to it, there's actually a space. For most of us, most of the time, because we're so stressed, it's a very brief little flick of the shutter before we react. But you could open up that space between stimulus and response. It's a point of perception, of perspective, where you can begin to consider, how many different ways can I look at this, and how many different ways can I respond before I choose the ideal perspective and the ideal response for the greater good of all. And then we initiate that action. How cool would that be if we were awake enough and present enough that we did that all the time? instead of just reacting reflexively to our emotions and shouting out, yeah, well, you too, and the horse you rode in, the hell with you, out of my life. I'm done talking about it. Just sit down and take a breath and relax. It's remarkable how much time we waste trying to change what's already happened. And if you think you can control the world or control the stimulus, you must think you're a time traveler. How are you going to go back and fix what already happened by arguing about it and yelling about it and getting all upset? It already happened. It's already downstream. What are you struggling with? A memory? Right? Where our power lies is in our ability not to have any influence what's over the stimulus or over what's already happened, but in the present moment, how do I look at this? How many attitudes can I choose from? How many moods or philosophies or ways of looking at it are available to me? Could I wax philosophical here and be more clever in the way I frame this? That's a good word, framing it. And then how many different ways can I respond? And what would happen if I responded this way? What might they say or do? What might be a consequence of that? And then you explore all of those and run the movie in your mind. Say, well, that would have some advantages here, but that might create some other problems over there. Let me rethink this. Hold on second thought, use this frontal lobe, this executive function that we develop with meditation by paying attention. That's what meditation is, learning to pay attention through deep relaxation. To not only be smart and intelligent, but to understand. To use that intelligence to truly understand, and then keep expanding that understanding. And then we initiate the action. So stimulus and response, or cause and effect, is really a trinity. It's stimulus, perspective or perception and response, cause, meaning, and effect. Open up that middle. That's where your power is, right? I'm going to offer you something that I like to call the choices chant. I wish I had a better name for it. I never really liked choices chant. It's kind of a mantra. It's a little list of 4 questions. It's in my book, Fearless Intelligence. And it goes like this. And you may want to write these down. If you grab a pencil or a pen, I don't often suggest that you make a note, but the first is, I have choices. Just write that down. Number 1, I have choices. Consider how groundbreaking that is in those times when you feel like you do not have choices, or it doesn't even occur to you to choose a choice because you're so busy drowning or being suffocated by your emotions and feeling like a victim who has to struggle to the surface to get a breath of air, to get your head above water. Choices is the last thing that may occur to you. So to say, wait a minute, hold on here, cowboy. I have choices. Period. Number 2, there are always more choices than are immediately apparent. What if that were true? I think you will find in time, soon enough, that it is. Of course, there are always more choices than are immediately apparent. There are more mysteries in this universe than are dreamed of in your philosophy, Horatio. There's a lot more going on here than you've even begun to imagine. Number one, I have choices. Number two, there are always more choices than are immediately apparent. Number three, my choices are in my perspective and my response. My choices are in my perspective and my response. Not in fighting the stimulus, which has already happened. I'm always baffled by the law and order people that say, we need more police to fight crime. Well, police can't do anything until the crime's already been committed. You say, my husband's got a gun, he's threatening to shoot me. The cops show up and say, well, we'll talk to him, but we can't really do anything. Why? Because he hasn't shot you yet. Small comfort, right? You call the cops after, they can only show up after the crime has been committed. How does that fight crime? There's no preventive element in there. And when you fight against the world, when you struggle against what's been done to you, it's like, I'm sorry, the horse is already out of the barn. What's the point? Getting all upset. Roll with it. Look instead at how many different ways can I frame this? How many different ways can I respond? That's where your power is. That's where the choices are. Stop struggling against what's already happened. And number four, and my choices are always for the greater good of all. The greater good of all concerned. The greatest good of the greatest number. However you wish to say that. Number one, I have choices. I mean, if you memorize this and incorporate this into your life, this can be very, very effective direction to move in when you're feeling freaked out and victimized and helpless, emotional. Wait a minute, I've got choices here. Isn't that crazy? How do we get to this point in our life and nobody telling us, you have choices? You have way more choices, far more choices, many more choices than you even realize. Your choices are not in controlling other people or the world around you or what's already happened. The stimulus is already done to you. Your choices are in how you look at it and how you choose to respond to it. And number four, you make those choices for the greater good of all, not just your selfish self. This is not a you or me world, unless that's your outlook. It's a you and me world. Much safer, more loving, healing. You like life? You want to live long? Be kind. Be good to yourself. Quick little aside here, and this is an aside, and I'll come back to it later on another date. I've been listening to a medical doctor. My wife Doreen turned me on to this woman because of her fascination, this medical doctor, Candace Pert, with psychosomatic disorder and multiple personalities. And she talks about the molecules of emotion and receptor sites on all the cells in your body. Every cell on your body has receptor sites for all the different hormones, and they're called neuropeptides. They're little strands of protein that are the information agents in your body. And the allegory has always been kind of a lock and a key. You know, why does serotonin or insulin, for that matter, or any other hormone, uh, find the receptor site? How does it communicate that information? Do this, do that. And scientists say, well, it's sort of like a lock and the key. Well, how does the lock get into the key? I mean, how does the key get into the lock on this molecular level, right? Is it gravity? Does it just jiggle around until it falls in? Well, it turns out that it's sympathetic oscillation. It's, you find the right note on the piano, and the snare drum in the corner vibrates all by itself. Or if you tune a stringed instrument against a reference tone, like a guitar player, you have a reference tone and then bring the other string up to it. And as you get closer and closer, there's a beat between these two tones. It goes wah, 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 wah. And as you get closer, it goes wah, 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 until it's in perfect sync. Well, it appears, according to Dr. Pert's research with neuropeptides and the way they find the receptor site, that they're dancing. And that it's this sympathetic vibration or oscillation that aligns on a molecular level. This is way past cellular. This is all the way down to the molecular level. It's Shiva's dance. We think of ourselves as meat bodies, and all the research, valuable though it may be, slicing up tissue and bone and putting it under the microscope, that's all dead tissue. What we're missing is the spark, the flame, the eternal dancing, sparkling, fiery, eternal, infinite flame that we are. We're energy. Even the material stuff is energy. Hence the molecules of emotion, and what heals and what makes the body work better is to love it and be kind to it. Because spirit comes in through emotions. Again, this is a bit of an aside, but since we're talking about choosing choices, maybe we could foreshadow a little bit, choosing to talk about the effect of loving kindness on your body as well as the influence on other people. We always know love heals, but why? And what even is love? What does that mean? So worry is destructive. Fear is destructive. You worry about being sick, you get sick, you get sicker, you stay sick. You scare the bejesus out of these little cells, which are conscious, not to mention the molecules. We don't know if molecules are conscious. That's another debate. But we have overwhelming evidence that every single cell is conscious. It doesn't need a neuron. It doesn't need spinal fluid. It doesn't need a nervous system. A single cell, like, remember high school biology, amoeba, paramecium, those little single cell critters. Cells even smaller than that, a platelet, bone marrow. They're aware on some super, super elementary level. They're not thinking the way we think, or the way an animal thinks, or even a plant. Venus flytrap, how does it know to swallow the fly? They're conscious, they're aware. How does a plant turn toward the sun and track it across the sky and fold up at night, open up in the morning? That's awareness, that's consciousness. But where we are different as human beings is this ability to choose, and it happens in the frontal lobes, and you practice with any meditation. Every meditation is a practice of paying attention to what actually is, truly, clearly, deeply, without judgment, in the present moment. It'll change your life. It already has. You're here. Yippee. All right, Melinda, Hannah, I think you're both co-hosts. Who's going to help me with any questions we may have here?
I believe Melinda will.
There I am. There aren't any so far. I know somebody's going to come up with one.
Takes a minute.
Yes, it does. I really enjoyed that discussion, Michael, and what I realized through sitting through these classes with you is that when my sympathetic side is really taking over, and I just forget to do that simple pause and breathe, which slows everything down. And the more I sit and listen and do the practice, little by little, sometimes I remember, but sometimes it seems like a real slow evolution to be able to just activate the choices and stopping and if I can remember to take a deep breath, that's such a magical vagal calm down. So Patrick has his hand raised. I didn't know if you wanted to say something or me just skip to Patrick.
Yeah, go to Patrick.
All righty, Patrick.
Hello there.
Howdy, Patrick.
Howdy, Patrick.
So, Michael, you touched on something when I heard there was nobody else. I'm like, oh boy, let me get up and jump in here because I'm trying to make sense of the world, right? And you started, you showed me a few things a couple years ago that just really, it's like, oh, there's crack in the darkness, right? Oh, there's something there. So when you touched on today about going to the lower level, physical, mental, and what was the other third one?
Emotional.
Yeah, emotional. There's the one. That's the big one, right? So
Right.
yeah, so that's like our physical being. So that ties in with the mother, father, right? So mother being not just the earth, but every atom in the universe, the material, right? And then God being the spiritual, the father, and we're that manifestation of the mother and the father, but our spirituality part, and then the lower parts of the physical, that emotional, mental, and physical of our well-being, right?
Let me
And it just seemed to tie everything in.
let me lay that out. Let me lay that out for you the way I see it and make sure we're on the same page. The higher Trinity, the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, or Father, Son, Mother, that corresponds, the Father aspect is the will of the divine, the will of God. The Son is the consciousness or the love, that's the Christos, the Christ. And the Mother is the body of God, the physical, mater, material universe, right? So you have the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit is really the mind, the mental, the heart, and the body of God. Well, the lower correspondence of that is our mental, emotional, and physical nature. You see? So that's probably the best way to think about it. Is you've got the corollary, the Trinity above and the Trinity below. In fact, if you think of two triangles intersecting, that's the Star of David. That's what that symbol represents, the Trinity above and the Trinity below. And the number 7, by the way, reason that's often a powerful number is that's 3 above, 3 below, and then 1 in the middle, sort of like an hourglass. That's the soul between. But again, these are allegories. These are just teaching methods. They're valuable, but that's all they are, is metaphors, really.
Well, it's pretty awesome stuff.
Anna has something to say too, Michael.
I think it's far out the way it works. It has integrity. And if you ever want to go back to our third meeting, 003, in the YouTube archive of Ageless Wisdom Mystery School, you'll see that chart that I put up. And at one point, I think I even put it in the newsletter for download, of all the different trinities laid out. Cause, meaning, and effect, spirit, consciousness, matter, God, soul, man, and all the way down, Sat, Chit, Ananda, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. They're just the 1, 2, 3 of it. It's the bar magnet. It's the North Pole, the South Pole, and the magnetic field that unifies what appear to be opposites into one thing. It's a wonderful system. It has integrity. It's found throughout the world, throughout all time. And the triangle is an incredibly powerful shape. You know, the three-legged stool will not wobble. It's a tripod. It does not matter how long the legs are. Each leg can be a different length, and it's always stable, like that round ball I talked about. A four-legged stool or a table is prone to wobble if they're not all exactly the same length. Adding legs doesn't help. And one or two legs, well, that's not even going to stand up. So Pythagoras was onto something there. And the number 3 in music, you know, the first, the third, and the fifth in music. And there's other notes you can use, but I think the fifth is 2/3 of a wavelength, if I remember right, and the third is 3/4 of a wavelength. It's all math. It's all harmony. It's all vibration. It's all energy. Hannah's a musician. Hannah, why don't you jump in here?
I'm not sure that she's still here, but Larry did have something to comment if she's not.
Okay. Larry?
I just wanted to share a quote that I saw recently that from, I think it was from Plato, that the lowest form of knowledge is opinion and the highest form of knowledge is empathy. I thought that was significant.
I missed that. The lowest form is what?
Opinion,
Oh. And the highest is
empathy.
empathy. Oh, I like that. I've not heard that. I'd like that. Yeah, let me sit with
Yeah, it was new to me recently too.
that. Yeah. Pretty good for a wrestler. Plato was a wrestler. Okay, anybody else?
Not right this second. I think about that term empathy a lot and how complex it is. And I view it, I'd like your opinion on this. I view it as more of a gift to be able to get outside of my own little box. I just think there are a lot of people that don't have the gift personally, and it's frustrating sometimes. What do you think?
Well, I think we we all have the ability to empathize to varying degrees. I'm not sure we have the willingness because it requires a certain vulnerability. You have to question yourself and accept that the best of us, what we make of ourselves, is pretty much cobbled together. And when we get vulnerable and honest about ourselves in an attempt to see ourselves in others, which I guess is my understanding of empathy, similar to sympathy or telepathy, right? Then we look at this house of cards. I start flashing back on high school. And standing in front of the mirror trying to decide on a Friday night before going out to a dance or a party or something who I'm going to be. Am I going to be James Dean? Am I going to be Matt Dillon? Am I going to be a hard guy? That's what we called him. The black leather jacket, West Side Story. When you're a jet all the way. From your first cigarette to your last dying day, am I going to be a hard guy? Am I going to honor my geeky side, the nerdy side? Am I going to confront my anxiety around girls and what all of that represents and how giddy and helpless I feel and awkward and insecure? And usually what I would do is, and I think probably most teenagers, we focus on appearance. So I had to spit shine your shoes and make sure we used to wear these white Levi's. That was in white Levi's Madras shirts. Boy, I'm really dating myself. And, get your hair just so. And it's just crazy adopting a persona, a face, a character to play out into the world. And I'm not sure how far we ever go beyond that. It changes, it morphs until we sort of settle into some sort of identity, and then it's married and the station wagon and the kids and the golden retriever and the white picket fence and doing what's expected of you and joining the Rotary Club, and then suddenly you're 45 or 50 and going, what the hell? I was going to travel the world with a rucksack. I was going to climb mountains. I was going to live in a hippie commune. What happened to, I was going to go fishing all summer. What happened to all of that? And I think much of our lives is a casting about to find ourselves. So when it comes to empathizing with other people, which would be trying to see yourself in them, I suspect that's part of what makes it difficult. And then compassion goes a step further, it seems to me. Compassion would be empathy with an element of understanding the difficulty and the suffering of other people. This is the love your enemy stuff. This is if we can get over our fear of the other, then we can begin to ask yourselves, why are they afraid of us? I know why they're frightening me. They're frightening me because they're afraid of me. What am I doing to exacerbate that fear? And could I stop doing that? Because some people deliberately try to frighten other people. That's their power. I remember in Iraq, when we were in Iraq in the Bush administration, Dick Cheney one day going off about they're going to respect us. And to him, respect meant fear. And I thought, that's so odd that this guy, multi-millionaire oil man, pirate, thief, warmonger, believes that fear is power. Respect is love. Respect is love and trust. There's a triangle for you: love, trust, and respect. It's not to conflate respect and fear is really perverse. So empathy is hard, compassion is even harder. But when we go to compassion, we can say, well, is there anything that I can do to stop contributing to my enemy's fear of me? And then maybe we could de-escalate this whole situation. But you can see in the world very little appetite for that. The basic guttural first chakra animal instinct is to make them more afraid. I want them to be more afraid, which makes them more dangerous. And now we don't have to deal with compassion or empathy, and we're busy playing victim again, helpless victim. I don't know, there's a lot you can say about all of that, but it's a beautiful thing. It's a redeeming, healing exercise to develop self-awareness, empathy, and compassion. And then the world begins to look more harmonious and less divisive. Don't you think?
I was wondering if you wanted to take that a little further and suggest a technique in the moment. There's a woman I don't fall well with, and I don't like it. I like her fine, but I find the interaction is tense, waiting for her to say, frankly, a little bit of abrasive things. And, it's just that tension. And what would you suggest in the moment, imagining she's right in front of me? I've come to see that there is possibly something she's picking up in me that is making her unsure and therefore fearful and a little bit aggressive. And I'm sure you can come up with something.
Well, I think before the moment, a practice before you engage in the moment would help. But whether it's sort of like sports psychology. There's techniques for practicing before you play the game quietly on the sidelines with your eyes closed. And then there's techniques that you take with you into the game. So I would say a practice in advance would help. But in the moment, caught off guard, provided you've done a little bit of practice and forethought, imagine her as a helpless little baby. And imagine her being frightened. And how you would react if you saw a frightened child in front of you. What would you want to do? A child comes to you after a nightmare or a bad dream. You would, and this is overstated, but to develop the allegory here, you would hug the child, you would embrace the child, gently but firmly. You would maybe rock the child. You would whisper in his or her ear, everything's okay. I've got you. It was just a bad dream. It's gone. You're safe. Everything's okay. Well, in, two adults in, in this situation you've just touched on, that's overstated. You're not obviously going to grab her and hug her and rock her, but in your mind and in your heart, you can do that. You can soften and get a little melty. And the problem is always fear. What could I do to make her feel safer? What could I say to comfort her? People are so suggestible. They are so willing to believe whatever you tell them, good, bad, or otherwise. All you have to do is say, this will work out. This will be okay. No need to worry. I need more particulars to be more specific, but You understand what I'm saying? The attitude. Just don't take the bait. Just don't pick up the tug of war rope. If she pulls, you don't have to pull back. Just let go of the rope, put it down. And I do this in my body even. If I have a pain or an ache or a dysfunction in my body, or pain control at the dentist. I'm sort of risky admitting this, but it works. Remember, cells are conscious, so they're frightened. They're freaked out. They're feeling pain. They're signaling the brain. Warning, Will Robinson, warning. And so I talked to a little group of cells, around the tooth, let's say, that the dentist is going to drill. And I say, it's okay. I know you're scared, but I'm actually paying this guy a lot of money to do this. And and I know it's a little uncomfortable, but it's for our greater good. So, calm down, children. Everything's going to be okay. He's sort of the Pied Piper, the Mr. Rogers of the neighborhood. And damn, Melinda, inflammation goes down, pain goes down, healing accelerates. Again, I think it's those molecules of emotion Dr. Pert talks about, but more on that later. So I would treat her the same way. Just try to, you don't have control. All you can do is suggest, as if you're a hypnotist.
I think the key for me where I go off is I take that aggression literally instead of translating into what it is suffering and fear. I take it for how it strikes me, and then go down that path. And
Sure. And it's understandable that on a reflexive level, you're defending yourself. You're going to defend yourself. You've got these overriding programs that rush to defend, but to remind yourself that this is not the fear of danger. This is the fear of uncertainty. That's two very different things. I'm not in any danger. This woman is acerbic. She's a bitch. She's out for herself, but she's not going to kill you. Right? And so.
Probably not.
Yeah, probably not. Maybe, but unlikely. And so you can take a breath and relax and fall to that more appropriate level of how would Christ look at her? How would Buddha look at her? How would a mother look at her if that were her child? Bring your mom energy into it.
Sounds good.
Well, with that, I think that's pretty much our 90 minutes. So I hope you all enjoyed that. I love getting email, by the way, not only when I'm sick, but just let me know what you like about the class. I'd really love some input on what kinds of topics you would like to hear more of. I'm thinking about doing a class on the tree of life. It's a fascinating metaphor, allegory. Tree of life is found in virtually all cultures, all societies. I'm thinking about doing a series of 7 classes on an ancient Hermetic, well, presumably Hermetic, philosophy called the Kabbalion. Not to be confused with Kabbalah, spelled 10 different ways, but Kabbalion. It's a book you can look up online by the 3 initiates. And my research says it's really a guy named William Atkinson who wrote this in the 30s. But it's a marvelous treatise on mind power and the relationship of the conscious and the unconscious mind, the Kabbalion. It's a free download. There's a PDF online you can download. Very well organized, bullet points. See if you like it. Let me know about that. Or anything else, that's troubling you. Again, I do private counseling intensives. This is where the real accelerated growth takes place. It's a commitment. You don't have to do 10 sessions. That's the training. Some people just do 1 or 2 and feel a whole lot better. And then if you want to know about the studio, the salon, the conversation group of 10, shoot me an email on that. Just respond to the newsletter or address your email awmysteryschool @gmail.com. I'd like you to all unmute and say thanks and so long to all of your neighbors and friends. Consider the other people online here. They're very much like you. They're quite extraordinary people. Say howdy do to them. Thank you for being here. Namaste, aloha, salam. See you next week.
Next week.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Melinda. Everybody have a wonderful weekend.
Thanks, Anish.
Thanks, everyone. Take care of yourself. Thanks, Michael.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much. It was really great today.
Thanks, John.
Namaste.
Have a great week, everyone.
Namaste. Peace and blessings.